Have you seen the headlines about Canada's new refugee crackdown? Are you hearing rumors that Canada is closing its doors to asylum seekers, or that border officers now have sweeping new powers to turn people away? If you're an immigrant, a refugee claimant, or even someone just trying to understand what's really happening at the Canadian border, you're not alone. The truth is, there's a lot of fear, confusion, and misinformation swirling online right now. And if you're making life-changing decisions based on viral posts or unverified claims, you could be putting your future at risk. But here's the good news. You don't have to guess. I'm Saqib with Global Immigration Updates, and in this video, we're going to break down everything you need to know about Canada's new Bill C12, what it really says, who it affects, and most importantly, what it means for you, whether you're an immigrant, a refugee, or just watching from abroad. Stick around, because we're cutting through the noise to bring you the facts, the context, and the real-world guidance you can trust. Let's get straight to the point. Bill C12, officially known as an Act to amend the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, strengthening the integrity of the asylum system and border enforcement, is a piece of proposed legislation introduced by the Government of Canada. It aims to reform how Canada manages asylum claims, strengthens border enforcement, and addresses what the government calls irregular migration. But here's what you really need to know. This is not law yet. It is still a bill under consideration in Parliament, which means while it reflects the government's current priorities, it hasn't been passed into enforceable law. And until it is, nothing has officially changed for refugees, asylum seekers, or immigrants in Canada. Now let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Canada has long prided itself on being a welcoming country for refugees and immigrants. Programs like the Express Entry System, the Provincial Nominee Program, PNP, and refugee resettlement initiatives have made it one of the top destinations for people seeking a better life. But in recent years, especially during global crises like the Syrian civil war, the Afghanistan withdrawal, and more recently, conflicts in Ukraine and Haiti, Canada has seen a significant increase in asylum claims, some through official channels, and others through what are called irregular border crossings, particularly at places like Roxham Road between Quebec and New York State. These irregular crossings have sparked intense political and public debate. Critics argue they create backlogs in the system, strain resources, and may be exploited by individuals who could have sought protection through safer, legal ports of entry. Supporters, on the other hand, say these asylum seekers are often fleeing real danger and have no safe or legal way to enter Canada, and that turning them away would violate international and Canadian humanitarian obligations. That tension is exactly what Bill C12 is attempting to address. So, what's actually in the bill? Let's break it down into the key areas that are getting attention, and more importantly, what they could mean if the bill becomes law. 1. Strengthening border enforcement and powers. One of the most talked about parts of Bill C12 is the proposed expansion of powers for the Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, and Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, particularly when it comes to removing individuals who are not eligible to stay in Canada. The bill proposes giving immigration officers more tools to detain individuals who are deemed to be a flight risk or a danger to the public, and to expedite removals in certain cases. It also talks about improving information sharing between federal agencies to better track people who may have violated immigration laws. Now here's the critical part. Canada already has robust immigration enforcement mechanisms in place. People who don't have legal status or who are found to be inadmissible can and do get detained or removed. But the process is governed by law and includes appeal rights, access to legal counsel, and oversight mechanisms to prevent abuse. What Bill C12 seems to be aiming for is greater efficiency and consistency in enforcement, not necessarily a radical shift in policy. But the language in the bill has raised concerns among immigration advocates who worry that faster removals and expanded detention powers could inadvertently affect legitimate refugees or vulnerable individuals. Here's what you need to know as of today. These powers are not yet in effect. They are part of a proposal that is being debated in Parliament. That means there will be opportunities for public input, committee review, and potential amendments before it becomes law, if it does at all. 2. Targeting irregular migration. Another major focus of Bill C12 is what the government calls irregular migration, a term that generally refers to people crossing the border outside of official ports of entry, often in order to make an asylum claim. Roxham Road in Quebec has become the most well-known example of this. Thousands of asylum seekers, many from Haiti, Venezuela, and other countries in crisis, have crossed there in recent years because they believe it offers a faster or safer route to protection. But the Canadian government has consistently said that people should not cross irregularly. They should come to official ports of entry to make a claim. Bill C12 includes measures aimed at reducing irregular migration by clarifying that individuals who cross irregularly may face longer processing times or restrictions on their ability to apply for permanent residence, even if their refugee claim is ultimately accepted. Again, these are proposed changes, not current policy. Today, asylum seekers who arrive irregularly are still allowed to make a claim, and their cases are assessed under the same rules as those who enter at official ports of entry. The Safe Third Country Agreement, STCA, between Canada and the United States also plays a role here. It generally requires asylum seekers to request protection in the first safe country they arrive in, which is why many choose to cross irregularly into Canada from the US. But here's the bottom line. Making a refugee claim is a legal process in Canada. Even if your claim is made irregularly, you still have rights under Canadian and international law, including the right to not be returned to a country where you face persecution. That core principle has not changed, and it's highly unlikely to change, even if Bill C12 passes. 3. Refugee determination process reforms. Bill C12 also touches on reforms to the refugee determination system with the stated goal of making it faster, fairer, and more efficient. This includes potential changes to how refugee claims are prioritized, how hearings are scheduled, and how decisions are communicated. Again, these are proposed reforms, and many of them echo discussions that have been happening for years. The current system has faced criticism for being backlogged and slow, with some claimants waiting years for a decision. That uncertainty takes a huge toll on mental health, family stability, and the ability to work or integrate into Canadian society. If passed, the reforms in Bill C12 could aim to address some of these issues, but the details matter. Faster processing is generally seen as positive, but not if it comes at the cost of due process or thorough adjudication. The challenge for lawmakers is balancing efficiency with fairness and ensuring that genuine refugees are protected, while those who don't qualify are identified appropriately. For now, the refugee determination process remains unchanged. If you've made a claim or are thinking about doing so, the current rules and timelines still apply. And if you're unsure about your status or options, the best thing you can do is seek advice from a licensed immigration consultant or lawyer, not rely on social media or unverified sources. 4. Public perception and political pressure. It's important to understand the broader context behind Bill C12. Immigration, and especially asylum and refugee policy, is deeply political. Governments often face pressure from voters, advocacy groups, and international partners to both protect vulnerable people and maintain control over their borders. In Canada, public opinion on immigration is generally more positive than in many other countries, but there are still concerns about the economic impact, housing shortages, and integration challenges, especially in major cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. These concerns often get mixed up with debates about asylum seekers, even though many refugees are eventually contributing members of society. Bill C12 reflects the government's attempt to respond to those pressures while maintaining Canada's international commitments. But the way it's being presented, in headlines, social media posts, and political rhetoric, often oversimplifies or distorts the reality. That's why it's so important to look beyond the fear-based messaging and focus on the actual text of the bill, the legislative process, and the expert analysis. What this means for you today. So, what does all of this mean if you're an immigrant, a refugee claimant, a student, a worker, or just someone following the news? Here's the reality check. Bill C12 is not law yet. It is still being debated in Parliament, and it could be amended, delayed, or even rejected. Nothing has changed in terms of your rights or the current immigration and refugee processes in Canada. Asylum claims are still being accepted. If you're in Canada and you fear persecution in your home country, you can still make a refugee claim. If you're outside Canada, you generally cannot make a refugee claim directly. You would need to apply through resettlement programs or other legal pathways. Irregular border crossings are still happening, but they come with risks, including longer processing times, limited access to services, and potential legal complications. Crossing at an official port of entry is always the safest and most transparent option. Enforcement powers are not new. While Bill C12 proposes some expansions, Canada already has strong immigration enforcement systems in place. Any changes will be subject to legal safeguards and oversight. The refugee system is under pressure, but still functional. Delays and backlogs are a real issue, but the fundamental principles of refugee protection remain intact. Reforms may help address inefficiencies, but they must balance speed with fairness. What you should do now. If you're affected by any of these issues, whether you're an asylum seeker, a permanent resident, or just trying to understand the landscape, here's my advice. Stay informed, but verify your sources. Don't rely on viral TikToks, Facebook posts, or unverified news articles. Stick to official government websites, like IRCC's official portal, the CBSA website, and trusted immigration experts. Check your case status regularly. If you have an application in process, use the official IRCC case status tool or contact the relevant office directly. Searching Status of My Case IRCC or USCIS case status tracking might be more familiar to our US-based viewers, but in Canada, the tools are different and equally important. Consult a licensed professional. If you're unsure about your status, your options, or how a proposed law might affect you, talk to a licensed immigration consultant or lawyer. They can give you personalized advice based on your specific situation. Avoid panic or rash decisions. Immigration policy evolves slowly, and even proposed bills like C-12 take months or even years to become law, if they do at all. Don't make life-altering choices based on rumors or speculation. Final thoughts. At the end of the day, Canada's immigration system, like those in the US, UK, and other countries, is complex, constantly evolving, and deeply tied to politics, economics, and global events. Bills like C-12 are a reflection of those dynamics, but they don't change the fundamental values that guide these systems: fairness, due process, and the recognition that people flee hardship for a reason. The goal of this video was not to alarm you, but to inform you, to cut through the noise, separate fact from fiction, and give you the clarity you need to make confident, informed decisions. Because when it comes to something as important as your future, knowledge is your best tool. If you found this breakdown helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe to Global Immigration Updates, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Share this with anyone who's trying to understand what's really going on with Canada's immigration policies, and most importantly, leave your questions in the comments below. We read every single one, and we're here to help. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.